Welcome to Norse Code, the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I'm your host and producer. My name is James Pagashnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous podcasts around the internet, most notably from theathletic.com. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, welcome to the 9th year of Norse Code.
Oh, God. Yay!
On behalf of Dusty, on behalf of Arif, our bad. You know what? Our bad.
Yeah, this one's on us. It's a little bit on all of you.
Well,
but
we'll get to that. We'll get to that when we start talking about the Patreon stuff. Welcome to Norse Code, everyone. It is, in fact, the 9th year. I made the announcement halfway through last episode because I forgot. Oh, hey, I'm gonna. Yeah, so that was the same episode where I made the realization as I was editing that I forgot to do the Patreon part. So my voice drastically changed as I'm like half awake. It's 1:30 in the morning. And now I'd like to thank all these Patreon people, and then goes, all right, let's talk about the... Yes. No. So, welcome to this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys are all doing well. It's training camp time. Oh my, we have things to talk about. We have players to discuss. Potential depth chart stuff. We can talk about the Vikings finally having depth at tight end. Oh. Well, we can't talk about depth at tight end, but we can talk about the tight end position. So we've got a lot of stuff to talk about there. We also have some fun NFL news. The Dolphins punishment thing is much more fun to talk about than Watson. But we will be covering both of them here in just a little bit, along with the mailbag. But again, before we start, thank you guys so much for listening to Norse Code. If you enjoy the show and would like to donate to the show, if you hear value in what we do, you can go over to patreon.com/NorseCode and you can donate there. You can donate to the show for $3.50 a month. That gives you access to bonus material, or you can do the year-long subscription as well. If you do the year-long subscription for, I believe, $37.81, which is 10% less than you would be paying normally for 12 months of $350, you will get entered into the drawing for the Laquan Treadwell signed and framed jersey, which I've just been referring to it as the Goodell thing, because in the corner it's a big picture of Roger Goodell. But if you are interested,
as time goes on, your consciousness of the piece, let's call it, gets consumed by Goodell's presence more than it does Laquan Treadwell's.
It does. It's I feel like the picture of Goodell is getting older, and I don't understand how that works. But it's not in my attic or anything, so we're just gonna try to ignore that. Eventually, I feel like the owner of this should just bring this to someplace where Goodell's gonna be at, just to see if he can sign it. Like it's only really good if you get Goodell to sign it too.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh wow, the value of that. Well, I don't know if it goes up or down, but certainly it changes.
Literal tens of dollars worth of value fluctuation here. Be remarkable. But if you'd like access to this, we'll be giving it away. We'll be doing the official drawing for it the weekend of the first opening weekend for the Vikings. So that'll be when we do that. I'm going to draw a list of names and just make sure that everyone in it is okay with it, with receiving said item, because, I mean, I don't think my ex-wife would have appreciated me coming home with this. So I just want to make sure you're not going to get in trouble too if you get this. So it's like when Kyle Slaby won the giant quote, and I texted him, "You sure about this? All right, send it over." So we'll be doing that. Also, if it's within 6 hours of Grand Forks, North Dakota, I will be driving this to you. So you get a chance to meet one of the people in charge of Norse Code, or I can just set it up in a parking lot somewhere. You can just grab it that way, just like it was found the first time. So check that out.
Honestly, how it deserves to be treated.
Exactly. So that, well, we're going to ignore that for the moment, but... Yeah, so that's the thing. So check it out over at patreon.com/NorseCode. They got their second bonus episode of July just a day or two ago. So they are doing quite well over there with an explanation of all of the Happy Gilmore references last episode. So check that out. It's a great little piece. Also, you can go over to paypal.me/NorseCode as well and donate there, or go to norsecode.threadless.com and get yourself an Arif throw pillow, because I feel like more people should really go into that, right?
No, it's okay. Don't worry about it. You don't have to. Nope.
Okay. Well, I figured I would just check. But so
every time you bring up the merch store in the show notes, it's the same note every single time. It's just threadless pillow, ! Arif is your waifu, ! It's been like that for at least 10 episodes.
Yep, and I have absolutely no desire to change it. Absolutely no desire to change it. Let's talk about some fine people who have who've donated to the show or have upgraded their Patreon subscription over to the year. Let's go over to Patreon and talk about Cody Shonenman. Thank you so much. Ian Pauly upgraded. Thank you. Jake Houshins, thank you. Says, hey guys, just want to let you guys know that I love the show and I'm excited for another season of optimism turned to pessimism. That is a long time listener right there.
Yeah, that's good.
I remember the season of optimism. I remember the season of the optimistic Arif. Boy, what happened there?
I don't know if that did that occur in season?
That was week 1.
Oh no!
I believe immediately after that is when Dalvin Cook tore his ACL. So
yeah, we took out the shotgun week 1. Not for Dalvin, for me.
Yeah, it was definitely for you. Stevie upgraded. Thank you, Stevie. And Father Aaron Kuhn as well. Thank you. Also, a special gift from Nolan Kaler to a buddy of his. I believe it's his buddy Micah. He is now going to be a Patreon subscriber, and they have a wedding coming up here. So we're sending a special shout out to Micah and Elena. At the top of the show here. He's a huge Norse Code fan, but he did just graduate from a small liberal arts college with a BA honors in philosophy. And as I'm sure you both full well know, it doesn't really give you the necessary money for the entry fee. So we can expect many entries into the Arif's philosophy and James's relationship corner in kind. Thanks, fellas. So Nolan did you a solid there. So enjoy, presumably fellow Canadian. Also, it's fantasy time. This is what I always say. August 1st is when
the amount of relish in your voice.
Oh, August 1st is one of my favorite days of the year. It's
the mischief will cause. I
was telling my girlfriend I ascended on August 1st, just laughing at all of the entries into this. The fantasy draft is open. The lottery for the fantasy draft is open. We will be opening this for about 3 weeks. If you would like to potentially join us in the negative 25 point league, the regular league, or the Hell League, which is being opened up to regular folks just like you, fellow listener, check us out. You can either DM me on Twitter at NorseCodeDN. You can email norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. If you are already a person in Patreon, you can just do it through the Discord if you'd like as well. But send it in and let me know if you are interested in both the Hell League and the regular league, or just the regular league, because I don't want to send people to hell who don't want to do it. The Hell League.
yeah, it is a conscientious hell.
Listen, I don't want that evil on me. So if you are interested in the Hell League, which has that cascading point system for kickers, and you have to start 2 of them.
It's an inscrutable point system, by the way.
Arif and I need to go over it with a fine-tooth comb this offseason. There's a couple things we need to not double penalize this year.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, one of the benefits of the Hell League is that when something invariably goes wrong by week 3, and a quirk of the scoring system, I'm not going to say exploit it, because that implies that someone has done enough work to be able to take advantage of the quirks in the rules, but rather it just goes awry, Tom Brady suddenly ends up with negative 500 points, and we have to go into the system and figure out what's going on in the point system. One of the great things about the Hell League is that we'll change the rules midway through the season.
Yeah. That's what I did with the missed extra points, because we made the realization that missed extra points didn't mean anything in the league anymore.
Yeah,
and this is what the league was built on.
Were so extreme that the minus 25 points were just maybe not meaningless, but certainly inconsequential in the grand scheme of all the things a kicker can accomplish.
We got obscured by all the flashy numbers.
Right.
We forgot where we came from.
We double counted some things that hurt, that hurt as well.
Yep. We forgot where we came from. So middle of the season, I announced that now missed extra points were worth 50. This is something you all had to deal with, and we just moved on. So it's
the Hell League.
This is the Hell League. You're in my world here. So yeah, if you are interested in the Hell League, if you are interested in the regular league, norsecodepodcast@gmail.com, or send a message to me on Twitter and say that you want to be a part of it. Send your email address and let me know, and I am happy to put you on the list. We're 2 days into this, and I've already got at least 50 names on here. So this is...
If we get enough names, James is going to reveal an appropriately hellacious entry system into another league that I proposed and that we're both very uncomfortable with.
I love it. This is wonderful. What's the worst that could happen? All things are possible through the power of Ben DiNucci. I love this league. The negative 25 point league is the classic, but if you really need more, the Hell League is going to go. Now, there's only going to be a certain number of Hell Leagues, so if you get picked, you may end up getting put into the regular league, but I am expanding it dramatically this year for how many leagues are going to be available. So there should be more happy people this year. It is still exclusive, but look out for the fantasy draft this year. We're taking over. This is, I love how ridiculous all of this is. Everyone who signs up is immediately one of my people. I appreciate you so much. But right before we start, just a quick plug. Arif, you have a new show.
Yeah. So, me, Luke Braun, Luke Inman, Sam Ekstrom, have a twice a week podcast called the Minnesota Football Party. The energy of that podcast, so it's through Locked On Vikings of the Locked On Podcast Network. The energy of that show is meant to match, or at least revivify the energy of a previous podcast I was on. I probably can name it, but I'll just choose not to protect myself from like the minuscule chance of liability. But certainly it will resemble another podcast that Luke and Sam and I were on. Well, one of the Lukes. I don't know. The first episode's already out. We had a ton of fun. We record for like half an hour and it flew by. I was shocked. The first guest of honor we had was great. Like my eyes actually bugged out when he logged in. So good job by Sam for organizing that and then also not telling us. It was a ton of fun.
It looked well organized, like a well-oiled machine.
Definitely. And honestly, we're all just kind of cogs in that kind of machine. It's a Minnesota football party, so it's about Minnesota sports. So in some ways, it's like a Minnesota machine. We brought on the CEO of Zone Coverage, Tom Schreier, as the guest. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of the energy that we're going for. Ton of fun. It's a lot different, just like that other podcast was. It's a lot different than this one is. So you listen to this, I think you'll get something else out of listening to that one and vice versa. Because that one, a lot of free form, a lot of arguments, a lot of little segments and sections that I had a ton of fun doing. A lot of people were really excited to see that energy come back into the podcast space. So definitely check it out. It's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. It's where podcasts are, plus YouTube.
Yeah. So check that out. If nothing else, for them to laugh at Luke Braun, who showed up late to the episode. The very first
episode. Yeah. I was like tweeting at him to wake up, and then when he woke up, I told him to go back to bed.
It was wonderful. So
yeah, so I encourage watching this one on YouTube just to see Luke Braun's like coked out eyes.
It's wonderful. That's going to be it for the shilling. We went a little long on the shilling this time. We've got a lot of things to say about it. Next episode, we are going to reveal all the stuff for London, including where we're going to be taping the live show. So check that out next episode. But let's get into the real episode here. And we've got some training camp stuff to talk about. Training camp is now open. What are the initial observations that you're seeing?
Yeah, so we've had 1 day of padded practice, 5 other days of practice. Today, as we're recording, it's a Tuesday, was not a padded or full contact practice, probably because it was 95 degrees out, and the practice facility is next to a lake, so it's pretty humid. I'm not upset at all about any of that, of course. You cannot hear that in my voice, and if you say that you can, you're lying. But, limited set of observations. Just real quick, I don't know. Kirk Cousins looks good. He tends to look good in camp, but if pressed, I guess I would say that he looks better. I'm not paying a ton of attention to him specifically. I would say that I'm pretty excited about the running back situation, presuming that Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison's finger injuries from today are not that meaningful, and they don't seem to be. Dalvin Cook looks probably faster than I've ever seen him, which looks really cool. Kenny Wangu looks like he's shot out of a cannon. That's pretty exciting to see. I think KJ Osborne looks really fantastic. There's a question about the wide receiver depth chart that I'll get into more detail when we get to that part of the depth chart. But there's a lot there that I've been paying attention to that I really like. The offensive line, a lot of people have a lot of questions about that for obvious reasons. I think Christian Darrisaw looks good, but it's only been one padded practice. He split reps in one-on-ones with Daniil Hunter. So, I think that's probably a good sign, because in one-on-ones, they tend to favor the defensive lineman. It's really hard to get a win as an offensive lineman. And so Darrisaw getting one of those is really good. Brian O'Neill controlled Za'Darius Smith pretty well in the one-on-one. So the tackles, which, I mean, people are already pretty optimistic about the tackle situation, but it seems like they've got a reason to be. That's really nice to see. We're not going to get a good sense of how things are going until we get a couple more practices in, but I really like what I'm seeing out of that. The interior is a mess, and I think people expected that. I think people were hoping that, hey, maybe Jesse Davis, he moves to guard. Maybe that's going to help things. Hey, maybe Ed Ingram at guard. They just drafted the guy. Maybe that's going to help things out a lot. You never know with the draft pick. Chris Reed, Colts fans really like him. Maybe that's going to help out. Ezra Cleveland looks fine. It doesn't look like he's on pace to become an all-world guard. I don't think anyone really had that in their set of expectations, or most likely expectations for the season. Garrett Bradbury looks awful. I don't know how to put it. Like, everyone by now has heard the moment where Harrison Phillips absolutely demolished him in one-on-ones. One thing to keep in mind is that this happened twice, because each rep is run twice in one-on-ones. And Bradbury just looked awful. I will also say, though, this happened to Austin Schlottman, the other center, the backup center. I will say that the one-on-ones, not only do they favor defensive linemen a lot for a lot of reasons. One, there's more space because offensive linemen, when they go into a pass set, the other offensive linemen are also kick stepping back with them. And so if you try to loop around an offensive lineman and you go towards the inside, there's a good chance there's another body there, and that narrows the path that you can go on. That's not the case in a one-on-one. There's a lot of space to the left or the right, and an offensive lineman can't bump a guy into a guard in order to kind of stunt his pass rush path. So that's one reason. Another reason is that they kind of control the pace of the interaction. Another reason is that they don't have to care about where the quarterback is, and so they have a fixed point that they can always attack, and so on and so on. So there's a lot. It's particularly bad for centers because centers very often have the least amount of space to deal with in terms of blocking someone, and so the person that they're blocking is unlikely to be able to develop a path around the center unless it's a very long developing play. And centers are not as often one-on-one with anybody in a pass rush situation. They might be in a blocking situation, but in a pass rush situation, because it's usually for pass rushers, they typically have guard help of some sort, and that's not happening here. So I will say that, but even after adjusting for that, not good. And it's not like I've seen Bradbury do a remarkable job in team drills. Much harder for me to evaluate him in team drills, obviously, but I don't think that he's done a really remarkable job there either. So there's that. Jesse Davis, I don't think has looked good in one-on-ones. I think in team drills, he's looked all right. So there's that. But that was kind of a pretty disconcerting set of one-on-ones. Ed Ingram, I didn't think looked particularly good. Chris Reed looked fine, but I don't know. I mean, he seems to be like, I think the Vikings' plan for Reed initially was when they signed him to be kind of the third option there. So it'd be Jesse Davis 1, Ed Ingram 2, or vice versa, and then Chris Reed. So the fact that he seems to be fine, I don't know how meaningful that is, but that's something to kind of keep in mind. I did notice that Chris Reed took snaps at center. He has very occasionally taken snaps at center through OTAs. He probably has already done it in training camp, but this is the first time I saw him do it in training camp. I do know that he did it in OTAs a little bit. And I'm wondering maybe, and this is idle speculation, but I'm wondering maybe if the Vikings might start Chris Reed and either make Garrett Bradbury backup or cut him or trade him or something. I don't know. Find a way to move on from him as a starter. So that's a possibility. On the defensive side of the ball, I mean, obviously, you like what you see from Dalvin Tomlinson, Harrison Phillips. Who they're going up against does not give you a really good barometer for how good they are. But I don't know. Daniil Hunter looks really phenomenal. Zadarius Smith, I want to see a little bit more from, but I'm not particularly worried about him. The questions a lot of people have are in that secondary, right? Like, is Lewis Cine going to start? If he's not going to start, are they going to find a way to get him on the field? And I would not be shocked if Cameron Bynum started above Lewis Cine. Bynum has been playing really, really well in camp. Like, it's not just that Cine is a rookie, and it might take him some time to learn the defense. Bynum is genuinely doing a really good job. He is still getting burned sometimes. It's not like he's perfect. I mean, he's not like Harrison Smith, right? And so if you're looking for upside, Cine has that. I think also Lewis Cine is clearly demonstrating that he has a lot to learn. The first couple of days in camp were rough for him. I haven't seen anything too alarming in the last couple of days, so that's good. It might mean he's learning quickly, but he really hasn't had a great highlight yet in his favor, and Bynum certainly has. So I think that you're probably fine with Bynum, which I'm going to spend a lot of time dinging last year's draft class, but Bynum was a member of that. He's pretty good. So I think that if we don't see Lewis Cine for a while, that's not going to be a huge set of alarm bells. Now, Andrew Booth is competing with Cameron Dancer for the starting spot opposite Patrick Peterson. First, Patrick Peterson, I think, has played really, really well in camp. I think better than I expected. Not a lot of people, I think, have brought him up. That's obvious. That's fine, right? Like, he's not getting burned, right? But Dantzler is doing a really good job against even Adam Thielen, but also against KJ Osborne and Amir Smith-Marset. And just generally, who he's lined up against when it's not Justin Jefferson. He's gotten, pass breakups, multiple pass breakups in camp. I think probably more than any other cornerback right now. He's got more pass breakups, which is really nice to see. He's playing with a lot of quick trigger. Like, he's got a really good reaction time. Like, he's still not the most fluid cornerback in the world. Like, from a fluidity perspective, Patrick Peterson and Andrew Booth have him beat pretty easily. But in terms of how quickly he reacts to things, how well he's reading what receivers are intending to do, he's doing a great job. Booth, I think, is more up and down. And he's had some really nice moments. On the first day of training camp, he had the pick, which could have been a pick six. Or I guess it couldn't have been because he was downed, but at the time when I was watching, it looked like it could have been off of Kirk Cousins. Since then, I think it's been more quiet and more down, but he had a really good day today, which again was not a padded practice. I think that the arrow's up, but again, this is another situation where I wouldn't be surprised if the rookie didn't start. So you're in a spot where the rookie who might be most likely to start is Ed Ingram, and out of those three rookies that could end up starting, Ingram might have the lowest ceiling and lowest floor. Like, he might be the worst of the three, but he also might start sooner than the rest of them, which is kind of concerning. But I think that that's kind of the spot that you're at. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of the new offense, obviously, three receiver sets. I'm seeing tight ends being used kind of all over the field instead of just being kind of these check down artists, which is kind of cool. We're seeing a lot of movement of running backs and fullbacks all around the formation. We're seeing, there was a day where they did a ton of jet sweeps. That was kind of fun to see. I really like kind of the ways that they try to create matchups. I think that, sometimes they'll put four on the field. You got Amir Smith-Marset, who can match up really well against slot corners and linebackers, has a lot of speed, and they're really taking advantage of that. But yeah, I mean, I think that the stuff from the Rams offense that you wanted to see in the Vikings offense, you're seeing. I think that importation is happening, and that's exciting. Defensively, there's a lot of stuff to keep track of, and there's a lot of change, right? So you've got, your three lineman sets, you've got your two lineman sets, you've got, in three lineman sets, one of the outside linebackers / edge rushers is very likely to drop off into coverage. You're seeing a lot of that. You're seeing them finding ways to put three safeties on the field. In my most recent article at The Athletic, I noted that there was one personnel grouping that had one defensive lineman, two outside linebackers, and two inside linebackers, and three corners and three safeties, right? And I thought that was really cool. Like, they're experimenting with what they're able to do, and putting together like a really kind of fun amoeba style defense where they depending on what the personnel matchups are and what blitzes they might be able to get in the rush plan, that they're putting together, a defense that might be difficult to match up against, right? Like, so, a certain type of tight end might match up really poorly against a certain type of safety. So the Vikings can put three safeties on the field, put one safety up against that tight end. You might know that, hey, that slot receiver is really fast and our slot corners can't cover that. Well, we can put a safety up top of them and also still have a nickel corner underneath them and have a coverage plan for that without sacrificing coverage elsewhere, stuff like that. So I kind of like how much experimentation there is in the defense. I know that there was a concern that the defense might not have that kind of room in year one because of the quality problems at cornerback, but right now, it certainly seems like they're trying. Who knows by the time the season starts if they find out as a result of those experiments that that's something that they're not capable of. But at least they're trying and seeing what they have.
The defense also, from reports online, it sounds like there's a little bit of jaw jacking between the corners and the receivers at this point. Just I don't know if it's just fun. It's back to training camp sort of stuff, or if they're really trying to get a little bit of confidence out there.
Yeah, no, I think it's just who they are, right? Like, so particularly Andrew Booth, but you're seeing this from some of the other corners as well, where Andrew Booth will continue to shit talk, right? He'll continue to taunt, Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen or Amir Smith or whoever. He promises that he's going to be a matchup problem for whoever he goes up against. He's doing a really good job of keeping his confidence up and making sure that he feels ready to play at a moment's notice. So that there's a lot of that's coming from Andrew Booth. But I mean, I think you're seeing it to some degree from every corner. I mean, I saw Ty Smith, get up in someone's face, and it's like, I don't know, man, you're Ty Smith, but okay. I saw Nate Hairston do it, and he's only been healthy for like 2 days. There's been a lot of it. It's been fun to watch.
So, what exactly does Zero Dark LeBron mean?
I asked around. I was like, "Hey, I saw the video, so I know for a fact Kwesi said this."
Yeah, let's.
What does it mean?
For if you managed to miss this, and God bless you if you did, our GM went out and was, I believe, complimenting Kirk Cousins and saying that he was doing some real Zero Dark LeBron stuff instead of Zero Dark 30, Zero Dark LeBron style stuff. I was like, I don't know what any of this means.
Yeah, so I guess LeBron goes into a social media shutdown during the playoffs. So that's his Zero Dark 30 or whatever. It's like I'm not going to say weird, but like I don't know. There's not a great word for this. Like uncomfortable is the wrong word too, but it's an unusual thing to reference. Like Zero 30 was like a military operation to kill some dude, which like great, by the way, great. But like, yeah, also the playoffs. Like, okay, sure, fine. But yeah, my get like it seems to be like Kirk Cousins is dialed in. He's tuning out all the distractions. Um, I'm going to argue that if the boundaries of inappropriateness had not been crossed by referencing a military mission as an NBA playoffs thing, it still is crossing the line to reference a playoff thing as a training camp thing. It's an insult to the concept of making the playoffs uh, for this to apply to training camp. But I guess it just means he's real dialed in.
So speaking of comments about Kirk Cousins, they got in a little bit of, I don't want to say trouble, but they had to walk a couple of statements back over the past week or so when discussing things about Kirk Cousins and, say, Tom Brady.
Yeah. So Kwesi said in his availability a couple of days ago that his wife told him that he just needs to learn to say less. But just say less. And I guess like he was trying to speak at an abstract level, which I think he also said it the wrong way because he said high level, which he means like 10,000-foot view. But it also just kind of sounds like, oh yeah, you can't even comprehend the plane that my thoughts are on, right? Like that's kind of what he really means is like abstractly, when you talk about the quarterback position, this is what you mean. So he was initially saying like, hey, the quarterback position is really important. You can't really get very far without talking about, where you are situated at quarterback wise. That's just how the NFL works. And so you really need to zero in on what your quarterback is. All right, fine. When you don't have a quarterback like Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, which if you asked if you ask Kirk Cousins, like, hey, do you think you're as good as Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes? I think he would say he's not, right? Like I think he would agree, but it's just like a weird thing to say. Like, hey, yeah, he kind of committed to not committing to Kirk Cousins after giving him a 2-year extension. Yeah, sure, very weird set of, but like I guess he just like thinks that like kind of being honest is going to give him some good faith interpretations by the media. And like, while I would love for that to be true, and of course I would love for GMs and coaches to be honest with me, and I rail all the time when they're not, there's also like you kind of have to pick your audience thing. Like, I don't know anything about this USA Today reporter, so, and I don't think she was writing maliciously or anything like that. But, those comments got like snipped, and then you take a look at the sentence and not the article, and then, which always happens, right? And it kind of gets it kind of spins out of control. But hopefully this is not going to shut down Kwesi availability. I would like to speak to him more because there's not a lot of nerds on the beat that can talk to him and get deep into the. I shouldn't say I can get deep into the nuts and bolts, right? Like at some level we're going to be speaking different languages, but like, he's really excited about some of the stuff that I've talked about for the past couple of years. So I would really like for him to continue being honest with us, so I can keep asking him nerds questions about like Bayesian reasoning.
and honestly, I feel like that's what your athletic readers are looking for.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
Let's talk injuries. Specifically, let's go to tight end to start.
Yeah. So on I guess Sunday, right? Because it wasn't Monday. Or maybe I don't know. The days are running together. No, there was no Sunday. So on Monday,
this is what happens. This is what happens when Chad leaves the Vikings beat. Oh, the days are running together. The nights. I don't even remember the last time I slept.
Right, exactly. Dude, my article count right now is wild. Just like I'm putting one out every other day. It's crazy to me. Yeah, so we saw Irv Smith walk out with the trainers. It didn't look like he was limping or anything like that. So he walked out with the trainers. We were trying to determine if he was walking to the bathroom or walking to the training room, but a trainer had to unlock a door. So clearly he was walking to the training room, right? For context, it's like the same direction. Um, and he goes in, he comes back out. He has his pads on, but no helmet. He doesn't participate in practice. And then Kevin O'Connell, we only had an availability scheduled for Wes Phillips and KJ Osborne, who, by the way, love talking to KJ Osborne. He's always very informative. You're probably going to see some comments and articles that come from him tomorrow that are really like helpful in explaining stuff like, how Amir Smith-Marset is getting better as a route runner, or how punt returning requires all these skills that don't necessarily overlap with being a receiver. Really great availability from KJ Osborne. But, Kevin O'Connell knew that Wes Phillips was going to get questions about Irv Smith. And instead of putting O'Connell in a situation where, or putting Phillips in a situation where he doesn't really know what he can say or not say about a player injury, O'Connell just really quickly gave us a statement, right? And he walked us through it, and he gave us the type of injury, what they were doing to remediate the injury, and how long they expected Irv Smith to be out, which I have started getting tired of some of the ways that Kevin O'Connell does pressers. Just because, he goes on for a really long time, and either he doesn't answer the question or he answers the question at the beginning, and then he just keeps going. And it's like, I've got other stuff I want to ask, and you're almost filibustering here. And I don't think he's intentionally doing it. I think it's like he's enthusiastic to talk about all these things, but like there's a lot of words and not a lot that I can get out of it. This time it was very efficient. It got me everything I wanted. It was very informative. It was honest, and it establishes a trust with the media, which I really liked. So that was really cool. And most importantly, he didn't put his assistant coaches in a position they'd be uncomfortable in. So that was great. He revealed to us that Irv Smith suffered a thumb injury, that they wanted to get it taken care of right away. So this morning, Tuesday morning, Irv Smith got surgery, and they expect to or hope to have him back by week 1 against the Packers. And so that's kind of the timeline, right? You got a couple of weeks, maybe 5, I want to say. And it's, I would say it's an optimistic timeline, but right now the expectation is that you're going to get him or Irv Smith for basically the bulk of the season. So that's what happened. That's going to put some tight end depth into question. But that was the injury. We've had a couple of other minor things. I mean, all things considered, and now that I'm saying this out loud, of course, I'm jinxing them, but I'm going to say it anyway. All things considered, the Vikings are remarkably healthy, relatively speaking, right? Like, yeah, Irv Smith's out, but he's going to be back soon. You've got 2 players on PUP, 1 player on. I guess he's not on NFI. He's off NFI. Nate Hairston. 1 player that's on IR. That's Kenny Willekes. And then just like a couple of players where they're doing kind of load management stuff, right? So Kenny Wongu wasn't available. He's like day to day. But yeah, I mean, Harrison Smith, Patrick Peterson, Jesse Davis, took a veteran day. So they're doing a little bit of load management stuff, but for the most part, this is a remarkably healthy Vikings team, compared to like, you take a look at what the Packers have been dealing with on their PUP list and, who's hurt and stuff like that. The Vikings are in like a much better spot. And I think that that's true compared to most teams across the league. So, injury wise, there's a lot less to write than usual, which is I appreciate, first, because I don't want the players hurt, but second, I don't have to think about it. I can just write what I want to write about.
The other thing that happened as far as injuries were concerned, you briefly mentioned earlier, the hand injuries or the finger injuries.
Yeah, I think there were like 3 besides Dalvin, I want to say. I only remember 2 right now off the top of my head, but we did see Dalvin walk off. His finger, I guess, looked kind of mangled according to Sam Ekstrom. I didn't actually see his fingers. He came back and he immediately inserted himself into team drills. It was kind of funny because, it was not the first team practicing when he had walked back onto the field, and he didn't care. So he just took a rep with the second team. Sure. Alexander Madison too. He didn't even walk off. He just got that taped up. Obviously there's the thumb injury with Irv Smith that we just talked about. I think that there was like another finger injury, but yeah, I don't know, man. Someone texted me was like, "Hey, do you think that this has something to do with the emphasis that the Vikings are placing on like ripping out fumbles and stuff like that?" And yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't think that that's the case. I think that that is certainly worth consideration. I'd have to kind of know how they sustain those finger injuries in particular, though, right? Like if I my interest, like maybe Irv Smith might have gotten it blocking. A lot of people get finger injuries from getting their finger stuck in face masks and stuff like that. So that would have nothing to do with an increased emphasis on fumbles. You can make a wear and tear argument that you're kind of putting the fingers at risk more often, but I don't think that that's the case. But certainly, if finger injuries continue apace, we will keep track and turn it into a story.
Speaking of stories, there's a lovely story that came out last week about how accurate Greg Joseph has been and how it seems like he's ready for a breakout year. Had no one told our new special teams coach about what happens when you're optimistic about kickers like in general?
Cannot believe he did that. That is just wild to me. I mean, the thing is, the worst part is I can believe that Greg Joseph is set for a career year. I bet he'll kick really well, until it matters.
The moment that tweet, or I say the tweet, but the moment that quote came out, all of Vikings fandom just went, "You realize what evil you put on us, right?" Like,
yeah, right. This is, oh boy.
Why?
Yeah, the worst part is he's probably going to be real good now. Well, and that's going to hurt more.
I mean, last training camp, let's be honest, was very difficult for him, what with his wife leaving him. So,
yeah.
Just still one of the best, just accidental.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That was so much fun. But yeah, the moment that story came out, to a person, just Vikings fans everywhere, oh, no. We're going to lose again to the Lions, aren't we? It's just bad juju all around. Well, speaking of bad juju all around, let's talk about the Deshaun Watson suspension for a moment. This is something that came down from the judge, and the NFL has a couple of days left to decide if they are going to do something else with this, but he was told he should be suspended for 6 games for all of his alleged misdeeds. Where would you like to start? Because there's a lot of ways to tackle this.
Yeah, okay. Let's start with a couple of things. First, Sue Robinson made a judgment that she felt abided by the terms of the arbitration agreement. And so one could potentially argue that this has much more to do with the way the NFL has built its rule system out, and making sure that it doesn't violate labor law, and by that, the terms of the comprehensive bargaining agreement between the NFLPA and the NFL. So I'll start with that is the lens by which Judge Sue Robinson arbitrated this decision. There are a couple of problems for me. I'm not a lawyer, right? I can't do legal analysis to any credible degree, but the standard by which Robinson evaluated the evidence is a civil liability standard. I remember there being a discussion about the NFL potentially using a significantly lower standard of evidentiary proof. But in arbitration, in matters like this, it's very often the civil court case standard, which is essentially more probable than not, right? Essentially, a 51% chance that the allegations are true, as opposed to a criminal trial where it's beyond a reasonable doubt, right? The NFL has used this before. I think most famously they did it with Tom Brady and Deflategate. They determined that it was more likely than not that Tom Brady participated in a scheme to illegally, deflating footballs itself was probably not illegal, but deflating footballs beyond the limit within the standards of the rule book. So that's the standard that Robinson used, and within those standards, Robinson had concluded from like the facts of the case that for the purposes of making a ruling on Deshaun Watson and the eventual suspension, that it is the case that Watson is a genuine danger or poses a genuine danger to individuals. So the like the statements include, I accept the fact that a work environment with sexualized conduct is not a safe environment. I accept as credible the testimony of these therapists that they felt unsafe and suffered emotional distress as a result of the massage sessions. Based on the NFL's broad interpretation of this prohibited conduct as reflected in the evidence I chose to present, I find that the NFL has carried its burden to prove by a preponderance of evidence, that's it, preponderance of evidence, that Mr. Watson's conduct posed a genuine danger to the safety and well-being of another person. And that Deshaun Watson met the NFL's definition of sexual assault, which is unwanted sexual contact with another person. Watson engaged in sexual assault as defined by the NFL against at least 4 therapists. The NFL only chose to present the testimonials of a certain number of therapists, just for context. It is well within the purview of the NFL to expand the scope of its supervision to a player's private life if he invokes his status as a player while engaging in prohibited conduct. Which she also ruled did not have to be explicit, although the therapists did indicate that it was explicit. He used the size of the Texans to reinforce requests for massages. He reinforced he used the size of the Texans to reinforce where he wanted those massages to be directed towards. He established himself in the context of the NFL before engaging in this conduct. He identified himself as a player for the NFL to initiate contact with therapists, and so on and so forth. And so it very much becomes an NFL matter, right? And also, as a result of his relationship with the NFL, made it more unsafe for therapists, right? Because it'd be, maybe potentially difficult to contact law enforcement, right? Or it'd be difficult to fight against the legal resources that the NFL has the ability to have. So all of that is the case, right? Robinson ruled that by a preponderance of evidence, not only did Deshaun Watson do the things he's alleged to have done, right? But also that, he'd done it to a number of women, right? Again and again and again, right? He has the potential to continue to be a danger to other people. And so one of the elements of the punishment is that he is only allowed to seek massage therapy from team therapists. There always needs to be kind of a record of contact and so forth. But the reason he only got 6 games is because of the NFL having post hoc definitions of prohibited conduct and the fact that one of the elements of the rule of law in general is that it enables people to predict the consequences of their behavior. So a post hoc definition does not allow you to do that. She ruled it is inherently unfair to identify conduct as prohibited only after the conduct has been committed, just as it is inherently unjust to change the penalties for such conduct after the fact. The NFL is a private organization, but the post hoc determination is what constitutes the unfairness prong of the standard of review. So the players and the Players Association cannot predict or negotiate the punishment mechanism by which this occurs. So that's how she arrives at the 6-game suspension, that there's a precedent established for what she called nonviolent sexual assault, which is, of course, a contradiction in terms, but it very much embodies legalese. I've talked about this at length on other podcasts, most recently on the QAnon Anonymous podcast when I did something on critical race theory, where you end up with like these complicated legal definitions that seem, nonsensical on face, and so ruled that that he'd only get a 6-game suspension. Now, outside looking in, dropping all of this legal stuff aside, if we rule that Deshaun Watson did the stuff he was alleged to have done or is likely to have done the stuff he was alleged to have done, Deshaun Watson's suspension is, of course, less than the suspension Calvin Ridley has for gambling, right? It is less than the suspension that Josh Gordon had for any number of violations Josh Gordon had, whether it has to do with weed or weed again, or the time he had a drink on an airplane. You got suspended for a year because of that.
Sure did.
Boy. And also you go back and you think, well, okay, so Kyle Brandt, is that the guy on Good Morning Football? He made a good point that Ben Roethlisberger was suspended for 6 games because of one accusation from one woman once, and
a very serious allegation, but
yeah,
a single allegation nevertheless.
right. Brandt's point here is not to minimize what happened with Ben Roethlisberger, but rather to demonstrate that there's a precedent in the most minimal version of this very serious case, right? Like the and he's not arguing that it was light or heavy or that it should have been heavier or should have been lighter, right? He's just saying we do have a precedent, right? Ben Roethlisberger was suspended for 6 games. You go into repeated allegations of this happening again and again. Now, I haven't read the whole ruling. I've seen multiple people reference within the ruling that Sue Robinson mentioned that he's like a first-time offender, which seems contradictory with the fact that 25 women have filed suit, and according to, I believe, it's the New York Times, or at least one other publication, that it could be up to 60, right? Have some level of allegations against Deshaun Watson of this nature were made to be felt unsafe by his actions in these sessions. And you cannot be a first-time serial committer of a crime, right? The problem is that she is probably, and again, I haven't read this part of the ruling, but my guess is she is referencing that the NFL has a punishment mechanism where a first-time offense, which is defined as the first time the NFL punishes you, has like a ceiling on it. And then there's the next time. And so in some ways, it can make sense, right? Because if you smoke weed multiple times or you trigger multiple tests before your first punishment, that's treated as like one punishment, right? And also on top of that, if I were to argue the devil's advocate case for the NFL, which, the devil doesn't need an advocate, but just to entertain what the NFL would say here about the severity of, say, the Calvin Ridley stuff, is that the NFL is not a legal body whose job it is to, merit out, punishment within the legal system, right? And so there is a separate mechanism by which to deal with things that are illegal, and all the NFL does is layer stuff on top of that for conduct detrimental to the reputation of the NFL. Whereas something like gambling is not illegal and implicates the NFL directly. It implicates the game of the NFL, right? And it sounds really gross to say something like, well, sexual assault does not interact with how the game is conducted, right? But gambling does. And so from a mechanistic sense, you can see why you would think of those things as separate things. I have made my argument again and again and again that when you hold the social position that the NFL does, and I believe I even made this argument when we talked about the Ed Ingram pick for the Vikings, when you hold the social position that the NFL does, you have an additional obligation because of the way that you help produce certain types of culture and are representative of certain types of culture and representative of the types of things that we see and that we signal and that we glorify and so on and so forth, right? And so there's something different about somebody who's been accused of sexual assault multiple times, found, I guess, not guilty is not the right word, but he was never indicted. The grand jury chose not to indict him, and then goes to seek a 9-to-5 job, right? You would hope in that circumstance that there are ways to make somebody safe, but if they aren't, ways to make coworkers safe and stuff like that, but if they aren't going to be convicted by the legal system of anything, that there is not really much of a right to deny that person access by which they'd be able to get stuff like food and board, right? Like you wouldn't starve them because they were accused of a crime, right? And so they would have a right to a job in an abstract sense. But the NFL is not like an accounting job with the mom and pop shop down the street, right? It's the NFL. It's on TV. It gets broadcast to millions of people. It sends a social signal about what is acceptable in society, right? Like the DoD would not be paying the NFL money if the NFL didn't carry a significant social signal. So I actually don't have a lot of respect for the argument about that kind of distinction. So that's not important to me, but that would be the argument, right, that the NFL would make about why these things are disparate. On top of that argument about social signal, about the place that you hold in society, the way that you signal what cultural values are acceptable and not acceptable, that applies to a differential in punishment as well. It's not enough to punish bad behavior or signal what is not okay. It's enough that you do it enough, right, that it is a big enough punishment that you clearly take a stand on the kinds of things that you'll signal as acceptable within the league. So there's that problem, right? I would also argue that Sue Robinson is probably incorrect because she also said that this is an unprecedented behavior, right, of a current NFL player doing the sort of thing again and again and again. And to that end, I would argue that precedent then therefore doesn't apply, or that you can set a new precedent for the egregiousness of this type of behavior. And so to me, acknowledging that while also saying that this is a kind of a post hoc punishment is really difficult. Now, I do think that there is something to be said about the way the NFL rule system is set up that is so distinct from when the Roethlisberger stuff occurred way early in his career. It's a different CBA. In fact, we're multiple CBAs past it. And so the NFL punishment mechanism for matters dealing with things like domestic violence and sexual assault is a completely different beast. And so you can make the argument that the NFL is reacting post hoc. I still don't think that really makes a lot of sense. I think that there is already enough within the NFL rules to spell out that this is the sort of thing that can have an indefinite suspension applied to it. Obviously domestic violence and sexual assault are treated differently by the law and by the NFL. There's a different set of rules, but seeing the NFL have the ability to take more severe action against instances of domestic violence where players are not found guilty makes it very, and again, there's a completely separate like domestic violence policy, but still it makes it very suspect that I would buy, right, the idea that a crime of this nature must inherently have kind of like a low punishment bar because it would be a post hoc ruling. Like I think that you can both create a precedent and follow precedent and punish Deshaun Watson a lot more. So this is you could probably hear it in my voice a little bit, but this is the kind of news that you get from the NFL, which this is not 100% on the NFL, right? This is a Sue Robinson ruling. She's an independent arbitrator, but it's kind of built into the way the NFL built its rule system. So they obviously play a part in this, and they were only seeking 12 games, I guess, which, F that's crazy. But we do need to be clear on kind of what the primary actors are involved here. I hate this. I'm disgusted by this ruling. I think a lot of people have said that Deshaun Watson should never play in the NFL again. I think that too. I haven't thought about it too hard. Certainly I sympathize with it, and maybe that's where I end up. But at the minimum, I think that he should lose a season and a half, if not 2 seasons, which is a very severe punishment, especially for somebody who's lost a season. I hope, and I haven't read the whole ruling, that the season that he, lost is the wrong word, missed with the Texans.
Sat out from.
Yeah. Forcibly sat out. I hope that didn't play a role in the punishment, because he did get paid for that.
And he's still getting paid now. That contract that he signed with the Browns was very friendly to any potential punishment he was going to end up receiving.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Paid basically $1 million this year. So for like a $280 million contract.
I can't even imagine what the Falcons put out that he turned down.
Right. Jeez, yeah. So this kind of stuff makes me love covering football.
It's remarkable, but let's move away from the world of Deshaun Watson. And let's talk about how Fergie is the majority owner of the Dolphins at the moment, and how everyone now reports back to Fergie.
Yeah, so majority owner is kind of, but like a highest ranking owner, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So technically, the owner and the limited partner are both suspended, which is a very difficult thing for like suspended is kind of funny here because look, if the Dolphins sold all of their ownership shares, right? Let's say the Dolphins were liquidated and they had to sell all their ownership shares. Stephen Ross would get his full ownership share. Just because the sale occurred, quote unquote, while he was suspended, doesn't mean he doesn't get the money from that.
Is this more like he's just not able to do public appearances in the name of the league?
Yeah, it's basically, and he can't go to the owners meeting, which boo-hoo. I'm sure he's really upset about that.
I'll have to bring my billions elsewhere.
Right. So, quote unquote, suspended owner Stephen Ross and quote unquote suspended limited partner. What's his name? I don't know. He got fined too, so I guess he's important. But yeah, Fergie is now the representative of the Dolphins ownership. Presumably, Fergie is going to be the one at the ownership meeting representing the Dolphins and the Dolphins' interests. I would hope so.
I love that. The Dolphins made a big deal about trying to show their, I guess, South Florida roots, and have much more in the way of celebrity, but South Florida style celebrity minority owners. So yeah, there's Fergie, there's both of the Williams sisters are in there. I believe
Mark Anthony for some reason.
Mark Anthony, that's South Florida. Yep. There was one more. Was it Jennifer Lopez or was it somebody else that was in there too? It's just odd. But the reason why this is happening is because, to a certain extent, dude was right when he had declared that there was some illegal stuff going on as far as tanking, as far as tampering was concerned. And when Bill Belichick sent out the text messages, he effectively caused the Dolphins to lose a first round and a third round pick.
Yeah. Genius move from Bill Belichick to do that. Incredible.
This when all is said and done, and I think without question, Belichick ends up first ballot Hall of Famer. You can't argue against it. You're wrong. But this has to be on the description as far as his accomplishments are concerned. He won games against the Dolphins that he didn't even have to show up to.
Just beautiful. Yeah, incredible stuff. Yeah, so I mean, Brian Flores, he gets fired. He interviews for a couple of jobs, doesn't get those jobs, and goes ham on the rest of the league. He's like, all right, well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about how the New York Giants are racist. Let's talk about how the Miami Dolphins are racist. Let's talk about how the Miami Dolphins tampered. Also, let's talk about how the Miami Dolphins tanked. Let's talk about all those things and more. I am an open book. and boy, howdy. While we don't have a smoking gun when it comes to the New York Giants related allegations, we do have a lot going on with the Miami Dolphins. So the NFL released the results of their investigation on Tuesday, perhaps to eclipse, I don't know, the Deshaun Watson news about the ruling about the Deshaun Watson news. The Dolphins have lost a 2023 first-round selection and a 2024 third-round selection. Mr. Ross is suspended through October 17, 2022. He may not represent the club at any team or NFL event. He may not be present at the Dolphins facility. He may not attend any league meeting prior to the annual meeting in 2023. He's removed from all league committees indefinitely and fined $1.5 million. The limited partner, Mr. Bruce Beal, may not attend any league meeting for the remainder of the 2022 season and is fined $500,000. So that was for tampering, although I suspect it was for tampering plus, and they won't say that. So they found that the Dolphins were tampering with Tom Brady in 2019 and in 2021 and with Sean Payton in 2020, meaning that they had a 3-year tampering streak. And
not the fun tampering stuff that happens that's just sort of agreed upon right before the trade deadline. None of that.
No. Like, while he was playing for the Patriots, the Dolphins were like, hey, after you blow this popsicle stand, you want to come to South Florida for a bit?
I love that. I love how brazen and illegal all of that is. Like, you have to imagine, you've seen Wolf of Wall Street, that scene where he, like, it's not based in reality. This conversation never happened like this. But the scene in the movie where he's on the boat and he calls up the agent that's investigating him and just lays it all out for him there. Like, the amount of chutzpah that is required to do that is unheard of. What amazing. What amazing clout.
One instance of tampering did happen on a yacht. So,
I love it. Even better. I forgot about
that. he like, because this is how Brian Flores learned about it. Because he brought Brian Flores onto, I don't know if it was Bruce Beal or Stephen Ross, but he brought Brian Flores onto a yacht in a marina, and he's like, hey, special guest might show up in the marina. Stay ready. And then Brian Flores is like, special guest. And eventually he finds out that the special guest is Tom Brady. I believe at the time he was under contract with the Buccaneers, right? The special guest is Tom Brady.
He never stopped being under contract because he never filed his paperwork.
Right, yeah. And so Brian Flores is like, special guest is Tom Brady. All right, well, you have your fun. I'm uncomfortable with this bye. Which, like, as an aside, Brian Flores is way more ethical than a lot of coaches. Nuts that he was just like, yeah, I understand that losing is going to help lead to better draft picks, but this is just unethical. Yeah, I understand it's Tom Brady, but this is unethical.
Like, I am not getting my name released involved with any of this.
I should ratchet that back a little bit, because he was trying to replace Tua Tagovailoa with Deshaun Watson, who we just talked about. So maybe I'll walk that back. But still, incredible.
He's willing to do anything to win, but he wasn't willing to do that.
He wasn't willing to do that. He's like, legal violation. Yeah, I'll do that. League violation? No. Not a league violation.
Is that legal violation? Is that the Lionel Hutz no money down card? Like,
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so they had no overwhelming evidence of tampering, and they did that. The other thing is, so after the NFL made a ruling on tampering and punished the Dolphins for tampering, or tampering plus, really. And then also Sean Payton while he was with the Saints. Oh, I should also mention that Florio had been reporting that the whole scheme with the Buccaneers was that when Tom Brady retired from the Buccaneers, he would unretire to go to the Dolphins. Like, that was the whole rigmarole there. Which I remember someone asking me, like, hey, what's this about the Dolphins stuff that you're hearing at the time? And he was a Dolphins fan, right? And so he was asking me, like, Arif, hearing a lot of Tom Brady to the Dolphins rumors. And I was like, there's no way he wants to play for the Dolphins. Have you looked at your team? This is fan brain. Which, remember, the Dolphins had the worst offensive line in the NFL, right? Like, Tom Brady's going to play behind that? He's going to throw to Jalen Waddle and his friend? Like, who's the other receiver? Mike Gesicki? Come on. No way. No way is Tom Brady going to go to Miami. So, to you, if you listen to the podcast, which I doubt, but if you do, incredible, phenomenal. I'm sorry. I was wrong. You were right. That's nuts to me. But yeah, so that was the whole scheme, right? That he was going to...
Which he couldn't even do.
Retire to get out.
There wouldn't even be like a possibility of him just retiring and unretiring to do. A period of time
you can't like retire and then the contract goes away. Like, that's not how it works.
Otherwise, players would do that all the time when they're unhappy.
All the time. It's not like this magic loophole.
No, it's like that. He must have thought he was some sort of genius looking at that going, what if we do this? Like, no,
legally, if I retire, this contract goes up in flames.
Yeah, as it turns out, if I send out a tweet, that's legal. That's fine.
Right? Yeah, we call that like a statement of intent, right? So yeah, no, we're good.
Remarkable chutzpah from this man. So yeah, it ends up being a And the idea that he was going to end up playing for the Dolphins while Sean Payton coached, and then potentially at the end of his time with the Dolphins, he ends up becoming like player owner, like part owner. What amazing! None of this is possible. Sean Payton is
through the power of Ben DiNucci.
Even Ben DiNucci has his limits, and we're approaching that. Looking at, I'm just envisioning that in the out of context quote now that I'm thinking about it. But even just looking at that, Sean Payton is still technically under contract with the Saints right now, despite the fact that he's walked away. Quote unquote retired.
No, that's not true. He retired, so the contract goes away.
Oh, I mean, he tweeted, but I mean, did he put in his paperwork? We don't know. All we do know is that because he's still currently under contract with the Saints, they'd end up having to negotiate some form of a trade. What do you have to trade? What do you have the Saints want other than an ability to take their not a quarterback?
Right. Yeah.
Fine, you can take Sean Payton, but you also got to take Taysom Hill too. You have to absorb his contract. He's a fine tight end.
So besides the tampering, there's the whole tanking thing, and the thing that gets me is that the NFL rules that everything that Brian Flores said happened, right?
Without question, except for this. It's like,
well, no, but that's the thing. They said that also happened. They were just like, yeah, but we don't have to worry about it. Like, that's the craziest thing. They were like, oh yeah, no. So the evidence shows that Stephen Ross had conversations with multiple members of the front office, including the general manager and the assistant general manager, that it would be better to prioritize the 2020 draft over winning, or the 2021 draft over winning in 2020, right? It's like literally what the ruling says word for word. It also said that it is the case that that Stephen Ross offered Brian Flores $100,000 to lose games, which Brian Flores turned down. And we know he turned it down, one, because he went on an 8-game winning streak, which,
flies in the face of. I like to think that he was doing it absolutely defiant of their plan.
Yeah, right. He's like, well, I was going to lose before, but now.
Now that you insulted my integrity.
Yeah. But yeah, so not only did Stephen Ross offer $100,000 for Brian Flores to lose, on top of that, Stephen Ross kept on just telling other members of the front office it'd be better to prioritize. Let's see, what did Mina Kimes tweet out? Because that was like, she put it pretty well. Mina Kimes, clearly hated by Dolphins fans for saying that the offensive line was bad before they put together one of the worst offensive line performances we've ever seen.
Mina Kimes, who just repeatedly owns the Cardinals on Twitter.
Yeah, I don't know why they keep going after her, man.
They keep trying, and she keeps just laughing about it.
Just hire her. You're not going to beat her. On a number of occasions during the 2019 season, Mr. Ross expressed his belief that the Dolphins' position in the upcoming 2020 draft should take priority over the team's win-loss record. These comments were made most frequently to team president and CEO Tom Garfinkel, but were also made to general manager Chris Greer, senior vice president Brandon Shore, and coach Brian Flores. These comments, which he took to be suggestions that he lose games, troubled Coach Flores and led him to express his concerns in writing to senior club executives, each of whom assured Coach Flores that everyone, including Mr. Ross, supported him. Yeah, it was before he got fired. So, like, how else is one supposed to interpret a directive to prioritize the draft over the team's win-loss record? So these are all things that the NFL found to be the case, right? The NFL was like, yep, that all happened. But then the NFL was like, but the context and framing is kind of what everyone seems to disagree on, which makes it seem like Stephen Ross was constantly joking about losing games and jokingly, as an employer, offered his employee $100,000 to perform a task as a joke. I what?
Basically, it's the no homo version.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like
of this. Like that's not a loop. That's not a real loophole. That's not a real thing.
Yeah, right. Like, I remember reading on actually I don't. I saw a tweet from the r/anti-work Reddit or whatever it's called, which yeah, I'm sure most of those texts are made up. But one instance where somebody was fired as a prank on April Fool's Day by their boss, and they're like, "All right, bye." And the boss is like, "No, it's an April Fool's prank. I was joking, I'm kidding." And the guy was like, "Were you? Because I'm about to collect severance." And he did. That's just like the nature. And again, it's apocryphal, right? Who knows if that story is real, but I can believe it, right? Because that kind of relationship between employer and employee does not lend itself to jokes about one's employment situation, right? Like that is just a thing that you don't get much leeway over. And if an employee takes what you say about their employment situation seriously, and a reasonable person can believe that it's serious, then you're done, right? And I guess that's kind of one element to this, that like a reasonable person would have thought that he was joking. But like, if somebody makes a joke 80 times and it's the same joke, you're like, oh, no, you just believe this, right? Like, this is just a thing you think. You're framing it as a joke, but clearly this is always on your mind. Yeah, it's just wild that the NFL was like, yeah, all of these things happened. We've got documentation of it happening. Brian Flores put it in writing and sent it as a written memo to everybody that he was upset about it. And then it stopped. Like, no kidding. Yeah, they clearly were tanking, but the NFL can't admit that, one of their teams was tanking, right? They'd have to have uncontrovertible proof, unassailable proof that a team was tanking before they punish someone for it. A, because, it puts all these other owners in a precarious position, even if they don't tank, because it exposes the fact that owners are accountable for their actions, and that would be bad. But also, like, it puts to light the question that that NFL games don't have integrity, that you can't, trust people to have a singular incentive with which they're approaching games, which, we can all understand to be the case, right? Like, we can wink, wink, nudge, nudge, but it is a whole different thing when they officially acknowledge it. So I think that's why they were like, I don't know, man, these things seem like jokes to me. This contract offer for $100,000 that for some reason you put in writing, that seems like a joke to me. I don't know. I'm getting a jokey vibe.
It seems oddly specific, the fact that it was already in writing. But yeah, we're just gonna call it that.
It's these jokes are funnier written down. So
yeah, otherwise the NFL would be in a situation like college basketball was, or even I think college football at some point, with like a point shaving scheme, and that ends up totally undermining the entire, like, again, integrity of the game. So yeah, the NFL can't flat out say yes. It appears that they seriously wanted them to be tanking. They can, however, say they were joshing about it. This was something that was thrown around as a joke, but was never taken seriously by anyone who had the ability to do anything about it.
Just incredible.
Amazing. Just ridiculous. Let's answer a couple of quick questions, because we got a couple of these. First question from Logan: is Bill Belichick God? That's the only way to explain how he got Miami docked a first-round pick.
So, yeah, obviously Bill Belichick had not even 5D chess, like 7-dimensional chess, right? Like Bill Belichick is learning string theory to play chess against the Dolphins. Like, that's how out of pocket this is. It's crazy.
I like to think that Bill Belichick hatched this plan while the dog was on the camera during the draft.
Yeah, right. While the dog was drafting.
Yes, while the dog was drafting, this is what Bill Belichick was doing. This was his distraction. A literal wag of the dog. Let's go to Alex, who says, should Brady be suspended for his role in the Dolphins' shenanigans, and why won't he be?
I have no idea what Brady's involvement in the tampering was. Like, if he retired specifically, clearly he was playing an active role, and in that case, yes. But you don't want to set the precedent that a player gets punished for being contacted illegally by a team, right? For being the subject of tampering, but players can tamper too. I don't like that idea. I'd love for players to just tell teams like, hey, I know I'm currently playing for the Bills, but I'd love to play for the 49ers, Coach Shanahan. I'd love that. And for Kyle Shanahan to be like, that's nice to hear, bye. I would love for this to be completely one-sided, right? And for players to just say all that stuff and willingly participate, because that'd be great. But it sounded like he participated, and that it sounds like he's not going to get punished for it. So in some sense, he should be. Why won't he be? I don't need to answer that question for you. You know the answer. I know the answer. We all know the answer.
Yeah, the NFL tried that 3 rings ago for him.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he just got mad and somehow younger.
That might be the best description of his late career I have ever heard. He just got mad and somehow younger. Gaming Nerd also asks, for Arif's tinfoil hat corner, was the Dolphins losing picks part of Bill Belichick's master plan? What other dastardly deeds does he have up his sleeves to sabotage the Bills? Is there any point to sabotaging the Jets?
So first of all, let's be clear. Bill Belichick is so advanced that he doesn't have aces up his sleeve because he doesn't have sleeves. You've seen his hoodies, right?
No sleeves. No, yeah.
Yeah. He's got them up like his shoulder, right? He's got like aces in like various inner pockets of the hoodie. It's really advanced stuff. So to sabotage the Bills, probably inspiring the Bills to produce their own PR campaign to remind everyone that they're the Bills. Just like really kind of saboteur stuff. Like I remember
no Lex Luthor style like weather machine.
No. It's
that might help.
So there's this video game I used to play called Star Wars Rebellion. It's really old, from like the 90s. And one of the things you could do is you could send spies to other planets, and they would start a propaganda campaign to do whatever you want, right? Like they could be a pro-Empire and you could be the rebellion. You could start a pro-Empire propaganda campaign, or a pro-rebellion campaign or whatever, right? And Bill Belichick would insert native but exiled Buffaloans back into Buffalo to remind people what it was like to be a Buffalo Bills fan and to remind everyone what the Buffalo Bills truly are. It would be totally natural. No one would suspect a thing. And people would celebrate the Buffalo Bills history. They talk about, how great Jim Kelly was, and they'd, bring back, relics of the K-gun offense and that excellent receiver core, right? They'd do the whole thing. And it would invite back all of the cursed energy of the Bills. And that would take the Bills down from the inside, right? They'd bring back these legends of the game for the Bills.
Can they bring back the corner that quit in the middle of the game to honor him at halftime?
Monte Davis?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like that's how deep it goes, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Is that Bill Belichick would convince the Bills, covertly, he wouldn't contact them directly or anything like that they should honor, people put them on the map. People like Marshawn Lynch, people like Vontae Davis, people like Terrell Owens, real Buffalo Bills.
The kicker. I can't remember his name.
Scott Norwood.
Scott Norwood. There we go. Let's honor Scott Norwood at halftime.
Yeah, and as your Jets question, no, I mean they're fine.
Yeah, the Jets are doing just fine on their own. Let's
love their draft. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, let's head over to the mailbag and knock some of this out. Nate Stanley, for starter, asks, do you miss Mankato?
100%. There's no question to me that the Egan facility is better for the Vikings in every way. And in many ways, it's better for me, right? Because I have to commute from where I live in Minneapolis to Egan. That's way easier than Mankato. I would find a way to stay in Mankato every year, even if we didn't necessarily have a budget for it. The company, whichever company I was with at the time. I loved staying in Mankato. I loved staying in the hotel room. I loved all of that because I love the energy of Mankato. I love the feeling of being at Mankato State. I know they call it something else. it's not a city I want to live in, right? It's like I'm so used to like, Minneapolis and everything that it offers. I don't want to live in Mankato. No offense to anybody who lives in Mankato. But no, actually, no, screw you guys. All offense to them. But it was a really fun couple of weeks being in Mankato and having that atmosphere. And it just like there's not a lot of vestiges of like, I know old school is the wrong word, but like the connection that NFL teams have with communities in a lot of ways. Just like the janky, well, I mean, the stands are actually fine, but like the janky setup between the fans and the players, and how you just had to cross like this weird dirt lead up to the practice field. So bizarre. But the atmosphere is just incredible. I love Mankato. So yeah, I absolutely miss it.
It's your summer camp.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. This is just work. Like, it's just work for me.
Eric asks, which Viking on both sides of the ball is most dangerous when they go, quote, zero dark LeBron mode?
God. I'm going to say on defense, it's Patrick Peterson because he's a natural-born leader. That I don't even know if that joke translates. That's like an inside media joke. I'll explain it. It's not that like because it did happen during a presser. So Dane Mizutani, writer for the Pioneer Press, I love him, asks about where Patrick Peterson learned or something along these lines last year, where Patrick Peterson learned to be a leader or how he learned to kind of become the leader that would allow him to manage a locker room and manage all these personalities and kind of lead by example. And Patrick Peterson just stares him straight in the eye. He goes, I'm a natural born leader. And he says nothing for like 5 seconds. It felt like forever.
Everyone's insides got real cold all of a sudden.
Yeah, and Dane's face was so funny because he gave like the funniest nervous smile, like he was like baring his teeth like an animal, right? Like it was so good. He's a natural born leader, just staring Dane, and we're like, all right, I guess that answers that question. And one of us was about to ask a question, and then he goes into detail. And I was just like, you shouldn't have answered that question. If you just ended it by not answering it, like if you just let someone else ask a question, that would have been way better. But then you filled the silence with more words.
Would have been
undercut what you did.
Would have been one of the greatest moments in Vikings press conference history.
It was so fun. We talked about it today, actually. Like it's so funny. On the offensive side of the ball, zero dark LeBron mode. It's
Would you go Dalvin or would you go Cousins?
I'm going to go CJ Ham.
Well, I mean, I always believe in going Ham, but that's a Ham is a dangerous player out there.
Yeah. I'm looking for natural born leaders that can go zero dark.
Captain Ham.
And yeah, I think Captain Ham. I think you have to go there.
Well, Ben Olson asks, what are we looking at depth chart-wise past KJ Osborne? Wilson, Smith-Marset, Johnson all seem bunched. Plus the Naylor and the UDFA guys. Help me comprehend the back end of the wide receiver room.
Yeah, so I wrote recently that Smith-Marset, to me, seems like he's firmly established as the fourth receiver, and that kind of separates out Wilson and Johnson. I don't know that Albert Wilson has a remarkable chance of making the roster at this point. I'll be curious. I've always thought he was really talented, so I'd be curious about kind of what the thought process was for bringing him in and what the thought process is for putting him where he is in the depth chart and whatever. But it doesn't sound like he's doing a very good job separating himself from other members of the second team or even the third team. So I would argue that the order there is probably Smith-Marset, then BC Johnson, and then probably Albert Wilson. What's really interesting is that I think Myron Mitchell's been having a really good camp. And I'm really annoyed because a bunch of people started tweeting this out today, and I've been like kind of building this notebook to not like that this is like a huge story, but building this notebook to try and see if the Myron Mitchell stuff is like real. And the first day that he has like a spectacular catch, everyone's tweeting about how he's had a great camp so far. But like it's true. Like so, the reason I've been waiting on it is because A, it's an undrafted free agent from last year, right? But B, He started off camp kind of rough with a couple of drops, and so I wanted to see if we had like a large enough sample size to say that he's doing a pretty good job. But no, he had a great day today. Again, today's Tuesday. He had a great day today that showcased that he was able to get open. I'm not going to say at will, but much more consistently than some of these other guys, right? Than Tristan Jackson, the Jalen Naylor, right, the guy they drafted, than Tommy Hennigan, than all these guys, right? Dan Chisna, who is improving, by the way. Dan Chisna's like clearly learning how to play receiver, and he's improving every year. I don't think he's good enough to play receiver yet. But Myron Mitchell is doing a really good job getting open consistently. So he had 2 plays today where he got wide open and gained yards because there were pass interference penalties both times, but honestly was kind of screwed by the quarterbacks. I think both times it was Kellen Mond, actually. The second time I had to remember, it was also Kellen Mond. But so he gets like crazy open on basically a fade, but a deep sideline route. And Mond just crazy underthrows him. And he is like 3 yards on this cornerback. And this cornerback might have been Andrew Booth. Like it wasn't like a bad corner, right? You get like 3 yards on this cornerback. And he has to turn around, wait for the ball, and then jump up. So he's planted. Right? So he turns around, he doesn't move, then he jumps up to get the ball. And it was not Andrew Booth. It was Nate Hairston, who, maybe he's not a great corner. But Nate Hairston rams into him before the ball arrives because he doesn't have the ability to slow down in time. And it's pass interference penalty. So he gets the yards, but he got screwed. He could have gotten a touchdown there. And then there's a deep ball, a corner route that goes all the way to the other side, all the way to basically the pylon. And Mond it's not nearly as bad, kind of underthrows him, and Ty Smith runs through him, right? So he did a really good job getting open. So Myron Mitchell, I think, has a pretty good opportunity to see if he can make the roster. I would like to see him catch some more passes, though. Like, he's getting screwed out of his opportunity to actually catch passes by how bad the quarterbacks are throwing to him. But I really like what I've seen out of him. So there's that. Other than that, then you probably go Wilson, then you probably go Naylor, and then you go with the rest of those guys. But that's kind of what that receiver room looks like to me.
Alex asks, are we looking into J.C. Tretter, or is he too expensive? Seems like a top-tier center would be a big improvement.
So everybody's been calling Irv Smith like fragile recently, and I don't think that that's fair because he's had 2 injuries. I guess 3 because he did miss 3 games in 2020. But he's basically had like 2 injuries with this thumb thing, and they're all unrelated injuries, and people are calling him fragile, and it's like ridiculous. He like missed a whole season, but he hasn't had a history of injuries. Well, J.C. Tretter has a history of injuries, right? And he played the entire season last year with both ankle and knee injuries. And he basically, my understanding is that he almost would never actually practice, right? He would just show up to games and play. Really good player, right? He has the ability to do that. But that is a concern, right? And then also, like, he's being courted right now by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because Ryan Jensen just went down. Looks like he's going to miss the whole season. So he's talking to J.C. Tretter. So it sounds like J.C. Tretter might be too expensive. On top of that, I suspect that him being the president of the union, I'm not going to say scares the Vikings or anything like that, but just adds a layer of difficulty that sometimes maybe teams don't want to deal with. So that could play a role, it could not. But he is a very talented player. He could be too expensive. He could be determining that retirement's a better option than taking a cheap contract. I would totally be in his rights. But he's also a very banged up player. And so that would play a role too.
Alex also asks, what clause could the Vikings put in Kirk's contract to elicit a similar reaction to the one that was in Kyler's? A weirdly specific contract clause seems so Vikings. So
it really does, and also there is a history of that, right? Because the poison pill with Steve Hutchinson.
I wasn't going to mention the Kyler contract in the beginning of the show. I wanted to wait till now, and I'm glad we had a mailbag thing on it, because this is the fact that bullying worked here is both a positive and a negative.
Incredible. So Kyler signed a contract. Very soon afterwards, contract details came out indicating that Kyler Murray was required to do separate independent film study for 4 additional hours a week. The time in the facility does not count, and that he contractually for those 4 hours he can't count any of that time if he also has another thing going on, like video games or a movie or something in the background, right? He has to be studying. So they not only put in homework into his contract, they put in a no distractions rule for his homework. Which, like, good God, I like that. That's like one of those things where, like, when you're in a bubble and you don't get feedback from the outside world about what you're doing, like, feels like it makes sense, right? They're just like, but we've been like, Kyler's part of FaZe Clan. He's doing all these things with video games. He loves video games. He's I think he streams. I don't know if he does. He has a Twitch. I don't know. But Kyler Murray's got like this whole video game thing going on. He's distracted by baseball. If we just, he already does 4 hours of film study. If we does this anyway, it's probably fine. And my guess is that the agent, pushed back against this pretty hard, and then decided to agree to it because he knew, and maybe I'm giving the agent too much credit, but decided to agree to it because he knew, A, that Kyler would have no problem fulfilling it, and B, that he's just going to leak this to the media, and then the media will eviscerate the Cardinals and they'll get rid of the clause in the contract. But there's just like no way anybody comes out of that looking good, right? Because the Cardinals look bad because A, they insulted, a really core player to the franchise, but B, they look like they don't know how to handle PR disasters. And then also C, they committed to a quarterback that they think doesn't study. What does that say? That's weird.
Yeah.
And then obviously Tyler comes out of it looking bad because it looks like he doesn't care about football enough to study it. And they seem to have overreacted to like one quote in the New York Times article where Kyler Murray says that he doesn't, do 24-hour film study like Peyton Manning. Like, okay, fine, whatever. Just crazy. So what 4 hours would they put in with Kirk Cousins? There's just so much weird stuff that he does that if you put it into a contract would violate labor law. Like you can't restrict Kirk Cousins from going to Bible study, right? Like that's...
Well, no, it would basically be something along the lines of forcing him to like put salt on things.
Oh yeah,
we've seen his cooking.
Right. Okay. So like you have to get grill marks when you grill, right?
It seems odd, but I've seen his was that a steak or a burger? Either way, it was
it was neither but it was but it was like neither, really. You could do like we've seen Orlovsky's spice cabinet. We strongly suspect what's in yours.
Yes.
We expect a full spice cabinet. So you could like enforce a spice cabinet occupancy rule. Right? The spice cabinet has to be populated, and then a spice cabinet usage rule where like you are required to use 3 things in your spice cabinet every time you cook, and you cannot use the same 3 things more than 3 times a week and not on consecutive nights. I think would be like the thing that you would do.
Kirk Cousins has to be somebody who prefers chicken breasts over chicken thighs. Like
100%. Not even close.
That's just the look that he has.
So relatedly, so Chelsea and I love to cook, right? And once we were cooking for Chelsea's parents, and I was like wondering whether to tell the story, but screw it. And they are remarkably food adventurous. Like they when we go out to eat, they'll be like, let's have the foie gras, the sea urchin, or I haven't had bone marrow in a lot of time. Apparently they introduced Chelsea to escargot in France. Like they're very food adventurous. But also for Chelsea's brother and Chelsea's sister-in-law, right? And so we decided to cook, and we got like these beautiful duck breasts, and we're cooking, and Chelsea's parents are super into duck. They love duck. And so the way that we cooked it, we did the whole, like, we scored the skin, and we put its skin down. We did the whole thing. It looked amazing. Incredible duck breast, right? We're basting it in its own fat and some thyme and a little bit of garlic, like you would a steak. It's just incredible stuff, right? And right before we do Chelsea's sister-in-law, Chelsea's mother comes in and was like, "Hey, Arif, can you cook the duck without the skin?" And we're like, "Are you kidding me? That's where all the fat is. That's insane. That's ridiculous." And it's like, and she was like, "Yeah, okay." So she only eats chicken, and it's skinless, boneless chicken breasts. And I figured this is a boneless duck breast, which is like a chicken. And if you just take the skin off, maybe she won't notice. And Chelsea and I were like, really wish you would have told us beforehand, because we would have bought one less duck breast. It's not cheap. But second, you're kidding me, right? This is insane. And so we were losing our minds. We eventually do it, right? Because, it's a food request. You don't want to, but like seething the whole time. And we put it out, and she's like, "Okay, I really appreciate that you cooked this, but this is clearly not chicken breast. Do you have any chicken breast?" And I was just, anyway, that's Kirk Cousins.
Jeez. So we learned that about you today. You're willing to die on that lie. That's boy.
Clearly not chicken breast.
Let's go to Michael, who asks, if Spielman was still in charge, which mid tight end would he trade? Would he trade a third round pick for?
Yeah, this is. I like this. There's a lot of options here. You go through the tight end depth chart on our lads, and there's a ton of tight ends that you could totally see being traded for a third round pick. Tyler Conklin, what a funny one that would be. Currently for the Jets. OJ Howard for the Bills. That'd be kind of fun. But along the lines of somebody that would be absolutely annoying and disappointing. Thaddeus Moss, Bengals.
Oh, my.
Yeah. There's already steam, right, that the Vikings should draft Thaddeus Moss, and then when he went undrafted, did he go undrafted? I know he got cut by Washington. Let's see. Yeah, he went undrafted. Then when he went undrafted, that the Vikings should sign him in undrafted free agency, and then he signed with Washington. The reason that this is interesting is because he's Randy Moss's son. So that, I think, is the one where you create a lot of stupid expectations that'll be really disappointing. So I think I think he's like 5th on the depth chart for the Bengals. So yeah, this would be perfect.
The next question is going to be from Skull Opinion, who asks, the way that the linebackers and safeties are filling out, is Asamoah going to make the cut?
Oh, no question. No question. I've put him in every 53-man roster. So the reason that this is an interesting one is because you're probably only going to get 4 inside linebackers. Like, this is a scheme that doesn't see a ton of linebackers populating the 53-man roster. If you take a look at the Rams 53-man last year, there's only 4. I believe the year before that, there were only 4. So a really good chance. And I think also if you take a look at the Broncos over the past couple of years, it's the same thing. So really good chance you're only going to get 4 inside linebackers. And there's a lot of players that have spent time with the Vikings, right? Because it's Blake Lynch, who even started some games last year, is higher up on the depth chart than anybody else. There's Troy Dye, who's actually taking snaps ahead of everybody when, like, Jordan Hicks was out. They just drafted a third-round pick in Chaz Surratt, and then they also have a third-round pick in Brian Asamoah. And so those are all players that really have a good argument for being one of the 2 backup linebackers. And as you noticed, that's more than 2 players. But there's no question. They love Brian Asamoah. He's a third-round pick, right? Unless he's catastrophically bad, which I don't think he is. I don't think the pick is a good one, by the way. I just want to be that. But I don't think he's catastrophically bad or anything. I don't think they'd cut him, right? And it is so rare to cut a 4th-round pick that one of the arguments that I made on the Minnesota Football Party podcast about why Willie Beaver should be ranked at the very bottom is because he was a 4th-round pick who was cut before week 1, which happens about once in the NFL every 2 years. So it's a 1 in 64 or 1 in 65 sort of thing. I remember like when Vince Mailey got cut by the Browns, it was the same thing. It's just so rare that a 4th-round pick gets cut. The rookie year before camp. I think the same thing is true of Brian Asamoah. He's definitely going to make the team. One thing I noticed that when he's out there, I'm always shocked that guy is playing defense because he just looks like a running back. Not only because he's wearing number 33, right, which is very familiar to us, but also because he looks like a running back. He's like, I think he's technically 6 feet tall, but he looks like he's 5'10". And he's in his build, he's just built like a running back. And so I'm always very confused. Whenever an offensive lineman gets to him, I don't think he's having a great camp. Whenever an offensive lineman gets to him, he gets completely swallowed up and he can't get off the block. And so, yeah, I mean, he's going to make the team. I don't have enormous expectations for him right now, but it's difficult to evaluate linebackers in the camp environment.
Let's go to Charlie G, who asks, with Aaron Rodgers doing Con Air cosplay for his arrival training camp, Kirk may now be in danger of losing his position as the number 1 Nick Cage stan amongst NFC North quarterbacks. What does Kirk have to do to solidify his position?
So he has to, I think you have to go to a more obscure Nick Cage property in order to really carry the mantle of being the Nick Cage fan in the NFC North, right? So you can't do Face Off. You can't do National Treasure. I'm going to go with one that has a ton of memes. It's Vampire's Kiss. It's one where he turns into a vampire. There's at least 2 very popular memes that come from this one. And I think people don't
the trailer's
recognize
worth looking at.
I would suggest you go to the trailer. I'm going to drop it in the show notes. It's wild. Watching the trailer does a horrible job of selling the film, but I do kind of want to watch it because it's so bad. Like there are points in the trailer where like Nick Cage's character, or actually Nick Cage is just like clearly wearing like cheap, maybe 10-cent plastic vampire fangs that you'd find in a grab bag or at like Party City, right? Like not a Hollywood prop, but like for a Halloween party, not even for Halloween, right? For like most people would have more self-respect and get vampire fangs. This is for like a Halloween party when you just kind of like just show up and do Halloween activities, or like a kindergarten party, just like these awful plasticky fangs that just like clearly don't even fit his mouth and protrude out of his mouth. Incredible stuff. I highly recommend watching the trailer.
You know, other options could include going in and wearing the weird like head prison thing with the bees from Wicker Man.
Yes.
I like that. Is there another player on the squad that sort of looks like Cousins, or is his height and kind of build? Because the two of them could wear each other's clothes and just do a face-off thing.
Yeah, if you coordinate for the face-off, I think that'd be pretty good. Doing it with Sean Mannion, I think, would be great.
Here, Sean. I realize you're not going to be used much this year, but this is probably the most important thing you're going to do all year. Said, furthermore, are there any good metrics we can use to objectively track their fandom, such as Cage Films watch per day, CFW over day, or Cage references over expectation?
So I like Cage references over expectation because it allows you to adjust for how often somebody might be speaking at a presser, how often they have an opportunity to make a Cage reference. Like obviously these metrics are designed with overall averages in mind for how often, some of these things can occur. And so when you exceed that, you go over expectation, after you exceed kind of the model average of that, a lot of that variability can be attributed to you. Cage Films watched per day. It sounds like a rate statistic, but really it is in essence a volume statistic because it doesn't account for opportunities to watch Cage Films. It doesn't account for, if you're a backup receiver right? You've got, more time to not be watching film and be watching Cage films than you are if you're, say, Kyler Murray, where you are banned from watching films, right? So I think that there is something to be said about Cage films watched per day. I think that if you're at a pinch, you only have access to that metric that can help you. But Cage references over expectation, one where you outwardly express your fandom as opposed to passively consume. Another difference between the metrics. I think that is. I think that's kind of just in a better spot to be.
All20Q asks, now that owners are getting punished for tampering, which player will Arif cause the Chiefs to lose draft picks over? You have to ask, huh?
Right, yeah, as a minority owner of the Chiefs. Gosh, who do I have a favorite player in the NFL anymore? I've been doing this job so long, I no longer have a favorite player.
Well, he wasn't in the NFL last year, but he was, but he's more recent in the USFL, so I would imagine that Mr. Cookus would get.
But see, that wouldn't be tampering. He's
that wouldn't
agent.
Be tampering, though.
Yeah,
I mean, Ben DiNucci is decided to play broomball or whatever the hell it is he's doing on YouTube, in addition to being a backup quarterback for.
Yeah, he is under contract, right?
He is.
So it's probably Ben DiNucci. Really, you probably just name a James Madison player, and I could find a way to be on board.
This is not difficult. Luke Braun asks, Arif signs a new contract extending his time with Norse Code. In it, a clause mandates that he has to do 4 hours per week of blah. This is a question for James. Arif gets no say since Norse Code employees have not unionized.
So I'm not like James. Let me be clear. I'm not James's employee. There's no employees here.
Yeah, this is according to the way that the LLC is set up. This is not. There's not a real owner situation here. But, however, if we're in a situation where we need to do 4 hours of something, the only thing that's coming to mind is that you're gonna have to listen to 4 hours of the ebook reading that I did for the Discord. Was it last week or the week before? So you get to go through that. Someone, I believe it was Glitchy Lauren, had sent had posted an image of what we thought was one of the worst potential romance novels of our time in the Discord, and someone had said aloud that James should do an audiobook reading of it. And I said I would do it for money. And then immediately someone, like a couple of people put together like money for it. It's like, oh crap.
I'm like very upset. So you posted the tip jar.
Yep. I said this is my personal PayPal. If you guys want to do this, I'm willing to put in the time to actually read this stupid thing and edit it, but I will make fun of it the whole time.
They did suggest that you post the audio to the Gone Wild audio subreddit.
They did, and I did not do that. However,
your opportunity awaits.
Yes. So a couple of people have gone through the entirety of it. Just the worst book. But these are the sorts of interactions you too can have over on the Norse Code Discord. And oh god, that was such a terrible book. I can't even begin. But yes, that would be my suggestion. Let's go to Kenneth Allen, who asks, today is a victory for all minority owners as Fergie assumes control of the Dolphins. What is the funniest thing she could do with that power? Bonus question, what would Arif do if the rest of the Chiefs ownership team were suspended and he was made the acting owner, other than, say, Ben DiNucci?
The funniest thing that Fergie could do is to reunite the Black Eyed Peas. Maybe host a concert at, was it Hard Rock Stadium?
I believe it's Hard Rock Stadium.
Okay, well, that's dumb as hell. Okay, at Hard Rock Stadium. I hate these corporate. I mean, obviously, like look at me, but these names just have no character. And play the uncensored version of "Let's Get It Started."
Boy, considering what Beyonce is going through right now with spazzing out, yeah, I could see that being an issue.
Oh yeah, that it would be totally well received.
God, That is the absolute worst. Let's go to Damian Barrett, who asks, question for James's relationship corner.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm stuck on the latest season of Harley Quinn, but my wife walked in 5 minutes into it and asked why I was watching, quote, anime porn. I tried to explain to her that it was a superhero show, and I don't think that helped my case.
You don't say.
What should I do? That's always
bite the bullet. There's nothing. You've got nothing. You get, as soon as your partner accuses you of watching anime porn, that's who you are now.
Yeah, that's not something you do once. That's something you do in their mind.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's okay. On your wife's podcast, you are now the anime porn husband. That's it. Yeah. When she's telling stories or she's answering mailbag questions, I assume everybody has a podcast because everybody's experiences are like mine.
Yes.
As soon as she's answering questions in a mailbag, she will refer to, so my anime porn husband, he does this, when he's out gardening or whatever, right? That's just who you are now. So you can't win. You could say, hey, for my birthday, I don't want you to get me anything. I don't want you to go and spend a bunch of money on, a grill or on a date or a spa trip or a vacation, whatever. I just want you to sit down and watch all 3 seasons, right? Because it's season 3, all 3 seasons of Harley Quinn, just so that it's not anime porn and it's actually just a genuinely good show, which, by the way, it is. It's a genuinely good show. It's just a good show. And honestly, the romance between Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy is very wholesome. And it's a really well written show that explores this relationship, and it's not porn. I promise it's not porn. All I want you to do for my birthday is this, right? And then she would do it because she loves you, because I know she loves you, because after she found out you watched anime porn, she stayed with you. That's how you know she loves you. And she does it, and she finds out it's not anime porn. Guess what? You're still the anime porn husband.
Yeah, that's kind of how that works. It's like making one too many jokes about being a furry, and then that's just how you're
exactly.
labeled.
Hey, you've been talking about this furry stuff for a little bit, huh?
Yeah, it's like the feet people who make one too many comments about it or seem a little too insistent on it. Yep. That's just what you are. That's always the worst situation you can have in a relationship that's not necessarily damaging to it. Is if anyone's going to walk in, it's always going to be at the worst possible moment. So you were set up to fail in this particular instance. I mean, I happen to have have watched the first couple of minutes of the first episode of the new season. Yep, I get it. I like how in that particular moment too, it's actually a parody of what's going on, and yet if that's what she saw, I could totally get that was her reaction to that. So.
Heads up, if you're watching the first couple of minutes of season 3 of Harley Quinn, make sure you're not going to get walked in on.
Yeah, maybe close the door. Let's go to Tommy Gunn to end this episode. Tommy Gunn asks, as we all know, Arif is an avid insectivore with a refined palate. The current state of supply chain issues leaves many wondering if at-home gardens are the new DIY endeavor. So, for Arif's insect farming corner, what species and breeds are best to start off cultivating?
All right, so when this question came in, I was totally fine. It was like, this is a weird question. I don't know if I want to answer this, but like, whatever, right? Like, I would have to look this up and give you a fake serious answer. All right. An hour after this question came in, I took a sip of my lemonade from Popeyes. 40-cent upgrade if you get a meal. I got the strawberries really good. And in the straw, there was a fly, and I didn't know. And so that fly went in my mouth with the lemonade. And I know, because you drink something, and there's something solid in your mouth, that's not supposed to be there. So I spat it out. I looked at it. I was like, oh, that looks like lint. Oh, my God. So that's what happened.
Is that why you said in the pre-show that you were, like, very upset about this question?
This is Tommy Gunn's fault.
How are you gonna? This is not.
Yeah, if he had never asked this question, this would have never happened.
That's amazing.
How would he have known? How would he have known if he didn't cause it? I've never gotten a question about eating insects on this show, right? One of the bits about this show is that people will make up facts about me to ask a question, and I roll with it as if that's true. That's how we get the beekeeping corner, right?
I mean,
like this. That's just
the
how
beekeeping corner is also because you're an established beekeeper, but that's
right. Obviously, I wouldn't have implied otherwise.
Yes,
but that's how did he know? How did Tommy Gunn know?
Is the fly coming from inside the house? Like how is that possible?
I am so upset. And here's the thing. I hadn't had most of the Popeyes yet. And so I was just like, I'm extremely hungry and I've got this situation going on. I, of course, immediately 2 rounds of mouthwash, brush my teeth, all that, right? But I'm like eating, and I got the mashed potatoes and I'm eating. And the thing about the Popeyes mashed potatoes, they're not amazing, but one of the things that makes them better is they got the little bits of chicken because it's chicken gravy. They got little bits of chicken in it. It's mixed in with the mashed potatoes.
Oh, no, and that's all you're thinking about at that point.
I am not equipped to eat mushy things with little lumps of stuff in it right now. It's the tiny bits, not here for it. The chicken sandwich, I totally ate all of it. Fine. Well, not fine. I'm still dealing with all this. But I'm not like re-traumatized by the chicken sandwich. In every bite of that mashed potato, I was fighting God. And it's Tommy Gunn's fault.
So, to answer your question, to circle back here.
The answer is mealworms.
Good. I'm glad we were able to answer that for him. I'm sure Tommy Gunn will appreciate that.
Pound for pound, some of the most protein on the planet. It has a wide variety of macronutrients. They actually beat most protein powders in proteins per gram. And that's all I got for you.
I don't even know where to go from here. That's going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. More than a mouthful of bug. Arif, what do you have to plug for us?
My funeral, because I'm going to die now.
Okay, so what about things over at The Athletic?
Yeah, I've got 5 notebooks up right now. I've got a 53-man roster. Well, if I include the notebook, whatever. I've got a 53-man roster up over at The Athletic. You can check all those out. I've got a piece on Quesido Fomensa's gambles that he's made about whether or not he's the sucker, whether or not he's the house, up over at The Athletic. Just a bunch of pieces over the past couple of days. I believe I've published over 7,000 words over the past 10 days, so I'm pretty happy about that. Plus, obviously, I've referenced the Minnesota Football Party podcast a couple of times now. I would really love it if you all checked it out.
Well, that's going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. We'll be back in about 2 weeks to discuss more training camp information and news and such forth. So, for Arif, my name is James. Thank you guys so much for listening. And please remember that the Vikings are not to be trusted. Also, check your straws. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan of The Athletic, and he can be found at Arif Hassan NFL. I am your producer and host, and my name is James Pagoshnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or my personal account at Big Mono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can do so in a few different ways. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there. For $3.50 a month, you get bonus material and more. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and pick up some Norse Code merchandise. Any questions or comments that cannot fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this.
All things are possible through the power of Ben DiNucci.